There we are in all our glory. Beautiful. Now, back to here. And we are recording. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Master Your Life, the show of insight, intelligence, and inspiration, where I ask you each episode to consider who is it you are right now and who is it you are most desiring to be. What is it that you're trying to create in your life? And are you on track to create that, or are you off track a little bit? Our guests are inspirational and insightful leaders from around the world. And today I'm absolutely thrilled to be joined with this beautiful lady from Israel, author, gorgeous lecturer, Pam Peled. Pam, welcome to the show today.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
It is, and isn't it so much fun the way the world works with technology? So I was introduced to Pam's work just recently by another guest that I'd had on the show several months ago, Andrew Roshada. So thank you, Andrew, for connecting Pam and I, because I had an opportunity to open my heart a little bit more. And isn't that nice this time of year, Pam?
Thank you so much. I'm not sure that it's technologically so wonderful, because I'd rather be sitting with you in Canada, I think, than in my living room. That would be nice.
It would be nice. It would be nice. So I want to tell people about your work 10 years ago, and then we're going to talk about your work now. But I'm just going to show, because I have the book, is like For the Love of God and Virgins. And as soon as I saw the title, I went, what in the world have I got myself into? But it's a great read. Like, I absolutely adored it. It's a beautiful story, a beautiful love story, but it also, I'll tell you, for this Canadian girl, I don't know a lot about what's going on in the Middle East. I really have not been a mainstream media watcher because it's so corrupt, that I just, I can remember when bombs dropped in Israel, that my mother would weep at the kitchen table, and I'd say, Mom, why are you crying? And she'd say, well, because I know somebody's family they're losing people. And it was a sincere pain in her heart. And so from that perspective, is how I grew up, is from that compassionate perspective. But I feel like so many people in the world really don't have a clue of what's going on. You beautifully outlined it and illustrated a lot of what's going on in the Middle East, in Israel and in the UK, through this beautiful story, For the Love of God and Virgins. So tell me, Pam, why did you write this book? What inspired it?
You know, it was a long time ago. Yeah. My kids were little. I've lived in Israel. I grew up in South Africa, and that very much informed the kind of person I am. I grew up under apartheid, when apartheid was raging at its evil worst. I hated South Africa is probably one of the most beautiful countries in the world physically, the climate and the beauty of the nature. But I really hated the terrible, iniquitous, pernicious apartheid system. And I left straight away as soon as I finished school when I was 17, and I came to Israel and got married to a man from London, and we had three kids here. And I felt we were living in such danger. There's always wars, and there have always been. Hopefully now it's changing a bit, please God. But we were living, every time our kids were out of our sight, we were nervous. We didn't let them go on buses. We didn't let them out of our sight. You couldn't go to a shopping mall. And every time there was one of these terrible bombs or terrorist attacks, it seemed to be reported from the point of view of the terrorist. And I'm not even getting into the politics here or who's right and agenda, but it just seemed unfair that, like, the BBC would report a person has been killed on the streets of Jerusalem when that person had a suicide belt, an explosive belt tied around him. It was just wrong reporting. I'm a reporter myself, and I believe in telling the truth and giving the right, but I just believe the facts have to be given as they are. So I'm also a lecturer in Shakespeare and in English literature, and I had this idea of pulling everything together and trying to write from the heart, a story from the heart of how it feels to always be the bad guy, even when you're not. You know, after 9/11, when the world sort of saw what terrorism can do, people, I think, had a little bit of an understanding of us, how it felt at the time.
Yes, but that was a long time coming,
Yeah.
so we've, and I'm in Alberta, Canada. So I've often said, like, we don't have any idea of actually being nervous about bombs dropping near us or worried about our children's physical safety. But in the last year, we've certainly had our eyes opened up to, other dangers, the people who want to see them. And then there's lots of people who don't want to see that. What is the big agenda going on? And again, in our naivety and our ignorance, we're going to look back, I think, and go, I think a lot of people are going to look back and go, boy, I wish I would have been my own investigative journalist also at this time. So I want to actually read a little something from your book, because I just thought it was so delightful. And we had a little pre-conversation before we got on here. So it's so funny, the things that I've marked in the book, because I just went, oh, this is a nice little nugget of things. But one of the things that struck me was you have this thing here. It says, my mom taught us that communication is the key to life. If you can talk to your partner, your parents, your kids, you pretty much have things under control. Women are bombarded day and night with ways to win fame and admiration, new hair tints and techniques to pluck out hair for good. There are plans to shake up and starve us and tempt and torment us into losing another few kilos. Programs to teach us to smell sweeter and look sleeker and drink Diet Coke. But nowhere are we told that to nab a soulmate, you really need to talk, and to let him or her talk to you. My mother taught us this. Where did that come from?
My mother. I have a very wonderful mother. And she really taught us that the key to happiness is to communicate. And it doesn't really matter if you've got another wrinkle, or another kilo, but you have to be authentic and talk. And once you can communicate and talk to each other, you can usually work things out. And I think that's a very good lesson.
And did you meet your soulmate?
I did. I met my soulmate in Israel. If anyone reads the book, if you read the book, you'll read about Ellie. And Ellie was actually not my soulmate. When I was a student living in Jerusalem, I shared a flat, a platonic flatmate with this incredibly nice guy, Israeli. And his name was Eli Miron. And he was quite a little bit older than me, but we always used to say that if I got to 30 and he got to 40 and neither of us was married, we would marry each other.
Right.
And he really, really was nice. And when he was a very liberal, forward-thinking, wonderful man. He was an archaeologist and he was a tour guide. And when Egypt opened up after the peace treaty, he was one of the first guides to go to Egypt, to take Israelis. Israelis just flooded to Egypt at the time. Everybody wanted to go. And I was teaching at a high school, and he always said to me, come with. And I could never go because it was always during exam periods of the school.
Right.
And then when I was pregnant with my second child, my husband and my mother and my baby and I, pregnant me, were driving back from Eilat, which is a port city in Israel. We were driving home. We'd been on holiday, and we heard this shocking news that there'd been a terrorist attack in Egypt, and a bus had been stormed. And I said to Martin, that's Ellie. And Martin said, there are thousands of people in Egypt at the time. It doesn't have to be Ellie, but it was. And he had got off the bus. He spoke perfect Arabic. And he got off the bus, and in Arabic, he said to the terrorist, we've come in peace to your country. We want to understand you. We want to spend our money here. We want to get to know you. And they put a gun to his temple and they shot him dead. And then they shot, I don't know, about 18 people on the bus. And it was a terrible disaster because emergency help couldn't get there for hours. Many of them could have been saved. It was ghastly. It was just ghastly. There was a Holocaust survivor on the bus that was killed. It was really, really a terrible, terrible thing. So I thought that I would dedicate this book. Eli himself had just got married. So I thought I would dedicate this book to him. And lots of people who know me and read the book said, just hang on, were you actually married to Ellie? I can't remember you marrying Ellie, because I blended autobiographical facts and fiction. But Martin, my real soulmate, I met my husband. He was from London. He was just, he looked exactly a dead ringer for Paul McCartney. People used to come up to him in the restaurant and ask for his autograph. He was a wonderful man, perfect. And tragically for us, at a young age, he got pancreatic cancer and died a horrible death. And my mom had also died young of pancreatic cancer. And it was just all a little bit much. But anyway.
Yes. Yeah, that's a lot. But you write, so you write from experience, you write from your heart and from your, and you have an open heart, and that shows in this book, that shows in your writing. So I think that's why it's so compelling, because you're not reading this sort of journalistic, not feeling reptilian, blah, 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 just like a report. You're actually reading stories that come from a character who has a huge heart and who really does feel.
I think partly that is true. And also partly I wanted to make this book interesting. I didn't want to just make it dogmatic and boring. And I also wanted to show different perspectives. So I tried to blend Shakespeare. Shakespeare is quite a big love of my life. And the wonderful thing about Shakespeare is that you can't read him in any specific manner. For example, and because he's such a cultural icon, you like to co-opt him for your own agenda. So it's great if you're a feminist to say, even Shakespeare says, right, that women are better. Mm-hmm. And if you hate women, you like to say, even Shakespeare says that women are no good. So the wonderful thing about Shakespeare is that his works can be directed or read in many different ways. So you can take, for example, anti-Semitism, and you can take the witches into their horrible brew. They throw liver of blaspheming Jew. And you can say, look, even Shakespeare says Jews are blasphemers. Then you can take the very same Shakespeare and you can take the speech from the Merchant of Venice, and where he says, hath not a Jew eyes, hath not a Jew hands, organs, dimensions, passions. And you can say, look, Shakespeare says Jews are just like anyone else. So you can do either thing. And I wanted to show that with journalism, you can do the same. You can take facts and you can spin them either way. And what the careful reader has to do is work out what actually happened there. So I wanted to blend. And I wanted to put a little bit about, life. At that stage, my mother was still alive, but my beautiful, fabulous dad had died young of cancer as well. We've had a lot of horrible cancer. And so I wanted to put in the feeling of taking a deep breath and turning grief into gratitude, which I like to sort of aim for, if it's not always possible, but that should, I suppose, be the aim.
Yes, as beautiful precursor to it was published in 2010, a really beautiful precursor to 2020, because I think a lot of people could resonate with that message, right? And just going, yeah, it's like this whole year has been a deep, okay, like making it through for a lot of people, even just one more day, not got to make it to the end of the year. It's got to make it through the next 24 hours. So
the end's in sight with the vaccine. So it's looking more hopeful.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, depending on your perspective on all that too, that's very Shakespearean. This whole thing is very Shakespearean. It's like, could be good, might not be so hot. So there's all of the, that's where our internal voice of wisdom really has to be sharply attuned to what's happening. Actually, it's funny because today it's actually a full moon. So there's this attunement happening in the planetary systems as well. And not that I'm a huge astrologer, but you cannot ignore that there's stuff going on this year that's been completely different than any other year in any kind of memory that we've got. So there's lots of reasons. Yeah. The hidden hand is at play. So we need to, revealing these things though. And part of the revelation is how much we can inhale of life and actually relax and let go so that we can maintain our health, our balance, our psychological wellness, our ability to give to other people, our ability to be compassionate, kind, loving, in an atmosphere that wants to encourage people to be, really angry and violent and hurtful, almost intentionally hurtful to one another. But a lot of it's set up, and you point that out in your book also, 10 years prior to this, but how much stuff is actually, you think it looks like one thing, but it is actually another thing. And one of the stories that you tell is about was it a Danish artist who actually was, what's that story, Pam? The Danish artist that did the cartooning?
Well, you're talking about the cartoon controversy, yes, which is still very much raging at the moment.
Yes.
The cartoons about the Muslims. You remember?
Yes.
And then it continued into Charlie Hebdo in France just recently, and it's a very massive, dilemma. I don't think dilemma is the right. It's a decision. I was actually at my book club last night. We were talking just about this. What is artistic freedom, and when should you have censorship? It's a mega subject. Yes. What happened with the cartoons, as I'm sure everyone remembers, is that they drew a series of cartoons during the suicide bombings depicting all sorts of things that the Muslims said were completely blasphemous. For example, Muhammad in the sky, waiting on a cloud, with a turban with a bomb on it, waiting for the suicide bombers, and pictures of virgins waiting with open arms for the suicide bombers. I can't remember the exact details, but they were cartoons lambasting the suicide bombers, and how religion has been hijacked in the name of violence, because I suppose the assumption was that actually Muhammad would not have wanted this kind of violence to be perpetrated in his name. It was just showing how
twisted
terror can hijack religion. Anyway, as you remember, there was massive outcries, and there were death threats, and people did get killed, and then later on Charlie Hebdo reprinted them and printed the same sort of cartoons, and there was more murder. And the question is, I have a friend who's a journalist, and he once interviewed someone about that, and he said in England, who was doing a terrible cartoons about Israelis, about the then Prime Minister Sharon, and he said, it's a one thing to do a cartoon on Sharon eating babies, but why don't you do a cartoon on the other side as well to balance? And they said, because we don't want to lose our heads. It's a very big argument when you're scared to. And should you invoke, should you show up religion? I don't know. It's a major field. It's a really big issue. And today the world seems to be, freedom of speech seems to be shrinking a little bit with all this new thing of fake news, and I think the world's becoming maybe a little bit more fundamentalist. I don't know.
Well, I think that, but it's good. Your book club was talking about it, because this is one of the things that we talk about regularly, is with the masking and the social distancing and all that, you're not getting together with the people who you used to get together with, even to have coffee and just to chat about, like, do you think this is normal? Does this feel right to you? Does this make any sense? Like, so all of those dialogues that we would have been having on a really regular basis just aren't happening. And so our trust in one another is even eroded when you can't sit with one another and dialogue. And I often read books and watch the news and think, where are the women in this? Like, how did any mom let this happen? Because it just seems to be a bunch of guys going rah rah rah. It's like lots of mad, but now I've seen more mad women also. So again, I don't watch a lot of mainstream media, but I know that when I'm sitting at my kitchen table or going to my friends and family, that's not how we speak to one another. It's not how we look at one another. It's not the viewpoint that we have of each other. And when I've traveled the world also, in my naivety, I didn't realize that other people were even looking at me the way that you have, maybe suggested in the book. I'm going, was so so naive, didn't know I might be in danger, because I've just always been very outgoing and sparkly and talk to people and accept people and for whatever, right? So So that's been my experience of the world. So to see all this harm coming and the labeling of everything has to have a label, and it really is destructive, because you completely depersonalize everything, and then you just become this bobbing head of whatever it is you look like, and there's no consideration for your actual, what is way more about you, which is your spirit, which is your soul. It's like that's way more about you than ever is your physical construct, or even where you've been born. So if people can get past all the labeling, which again, it's like my naivety. Maybe I'm Paul McCartney's, John Lennon's protege. That's I do. It's like that's how I see the world. So when I read,
that's the great privilege of being Canadian,
right?
And if there's anyone that I'm jealous of, it's Canadians. That, you know, it's so peaceful there, and it's so. But I'm sure it's the politically incorrect thing to say, but a few centuries ago, or how many years ago, did the Canadians walk into Canada, and where the First Nations was? Every country has got their.
Yes.
We sometimes say, and you know, I really am I want everyone to live together in peace. I really work for peace, and I don't want anyone to occupy anyone, including in Israel. But sometimes I think people who are in the privilege that their problems have been already solved, like in Australia and in Canada, where it was quite a brutal way of solving the problems there of pre-settlement by other people. I think the First Nations mostly just died of diseases when people
absolutely, and they were inoculated. So I've interviewed extensively people.
So it's all very well, you know. It's so. I wish we lived in the Middle East, and hopefully we'll get to it where our problems are all solved, and we can all be warm and fuzzy. How wonderful is that? But it's all very layered.
Yes, it is. And we have to have so I am warm and fuzzy and also a realist. So it's not like I don't have.
No, me too. I want that to be, but sometimes you find that, you know, people kind of forget what their country went through to. America's the same. I mean, not at the moment. America's not that calm and peaceful, but. You know, they've been through their land is settled. They had their wars and their displacements, and that was generations ago in Europe.
Yeah, very barbaric. There's lots of barbarism, lots of cruelty to.
And Israel, it's all still being established, and we haven't yet reached that equilibrium where everyone's found their place. So it's all. You have to have a very wide outlook, I think.
Yes, and I agree. I think you do also. So, and it's part of the bridging that gap is by having.
But I really do think that Canada is one of the, having got to where you've got, it's just one of the most wonderful countries. It's people are, you know, there aren't that many existential problems in Canada. Maybe the extreme cold, but that doesn't last.
Currently, though, I will tell you, currently there is an existential problem in that our prime minister has been found in bed with the Chinese. So we have an existential problem right now that people have, and that's the truth. So about 2 days ago, there's been
heard about that.
Yes. So 2 days ago, reports broke that Trudeau's been giving away, inviting the Chinese military, the CCP party here to train with our military. So all of this breaking news, and because I'm a reporter, I've been reporting on stuff now since probably about like February, March. And so it's been quite apparent for some time that things have not been very good in the hen house. The fox is in the hen house. So here we are. And the general public is coming to know why it is that people are making such poor decisions. Well, it's because we're not at the control of things. So not that we're going to get into that deep in the deep weeds today, because I think, again, it's like the Canadian public is coming to it. But back to several times you say in the story, you know, don't never let the truth get in the way of a good story.
Never let the facts get in the way of a good story.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at right now. So our time has come. And it's like, what are people going to do? Like, how are they going to respond? And some people have had it very cushy. I will tell you, I have not had it particularly cushy. So, but I've made it my life's work to, again, continue to put on that. Well, how do I build a more compassionate heart? And again, that's what part of this show is about. Mastering your life is about, how do you master your relationships with yourself, first of all, and go, like, can I sleep with myself when I make these decisions? When I go to bed at night, can I look myself in the eye and go, okay, little pat on the back, good job? Or do I need to, when I look at myself in the mirror, do I go, all right, I need to go back to the drawing board on this? And I've been diagnosed with an incurable terminal illness, neurological illness, Pam. So when I say that I go to the mirror and really do look at myself and go, okay, like, how am I doing today? It's a serious question, because
I'm so sorry to hear that.
Yeah, thank you. But it informs my life. So I think it's like how you're
doesn't impact on your beauty.
No, thank you. Maybe it amplifies it, because I realize how important it is to be in love. Be in love with yourself, be in love with other people. And again, it's like, I'm not there 100% of the time. So I do look at myself and go, okay, where could I improve or reform? How could I improve this relationship? And I've had some very challenging relationships, and that's how life is sometimes. So, but we learn through those things, and it's the heart that can figure out how to not turn towards hate and despisement and disgust and anger and revenge and jealousy and all of, like, those really dark things that can kind of float on the high tide. But to your point, it's like, there's always still this dark and light, always, just like Shakespeare, there's always dark and light. It's just how far are you going to dip in to the tank, and then, how high are you going to elevate?
But because of that, and that there is such a lot of darkness,
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to make my book light in tone.
Yes.
So I wanted to make it funny, and I wanted to make it, above all, I think I wanted to make it interesting. So I wanted to give piquante facts, clever, interesting little facts about Shakespeare's life and about his words, and about things that people would say, wow, I didn't know this. For example, the whole thing about teeth. Do you remember, for example, in the 1600s, not so many people know this, you had to be quite rich to afford sugar to be able to eat cakes, because sugar was just starting to be imported, and there was no oral hygiene. So people who ate sugar got black teeth because their teeth started rotting.
Right.
And so the poor people who couldn't afford sugar also wanted to show, I'm not so poor. So they used to get coal dust and rub it on their teeth so that their teeth also looked black. And when you think of how much time and money people spend today making their teeth white, it's quite funny.
This is just
hilarious. How fashions change.
Yeah, hilarious. It's kind of, and people used to appreciate being overweight because it meant you had lots of money, right? It's just like, got tons of money because I can eat lots, because that's the sign of. Yeah. And again, too, like, everyone who's shopping for a Christmas present or something to do during this, next lockdown, this is a great read also, because it takes you across the world and around the world in a little bit different perspective than maybe you've got right now at your kitchen table, which is kind of fun. So there was several, I haven't traveled to Europe so my understanding of Europe, even though I want to go, it's in my heart, just haven't done it. Lots of kids of lots and lots of children. It's just, and we're into the grandchild phase now, or I'm into the grandchild phase now. So just busy with all that. So the traveling hasn't happened, but right now, while we're in lockdown, nobody's traveling very much. Yeah. And it's this really interesting way of getting a look at what, some of the stuff in Israel, some of the stuff in London, some of the things in the UK that you might not have any frame of reference for, but it's like taking a trip without taking the trip. And then when you plan your trip, there's some places in here that you talk about that people might want to go. It's like, oh, I want to see that place. That would be interesting to go to. It'd be fun. So I thought it was a really good job of describing some of the traditions. Also, some of the traditions of grieving I thought were quite interesting. You know, every culture has its way of grieving, and your main character talks about grieving this husband who she's not quite sure if he's gone yet or not. But if anyone wants to know about the process of grief or how it might look from a different perspective, it's talked about too in this book.
Yeah, absolutely. Today is a day of grief. It's sort of grieving for me. It's exactly 8 years today since my husband died of pancreatic cancer.
Yeah.
The book was a little bit prophetic because I wrote about the grief. I wrote about it, I knew about it from my mom's point of view, you know, when my dad died. So I'd sort of experienced it alongside her, but it's never quite the same. And then just after the book came out, and we had all sorts of plans, and I'd had a coast-to-coast trip plan to promote the book in America and Canada. And then Martin got pancreatic cancer, which is exactly the disease that my mother had had a few years before.
Yeah, wow.
And we just could not believe it. And they were healthy people who weren't overweight and didn't drink and didn't smoke. And it was just, so Martin said to me, wow, this book, and he was my greatest sort of, he was my skin, you know, and my breath. And he really encouraged me to do everything that I did. And he just said, wow, your book's prophetic, because it was about grieving a husband. And that's it. The book came out. I was just in no state to do any tours or promote it. So it's kind of nice 8 years later, on the exact day of his death. I feel he's, you know, I told you before that in the Jewish religion, we light a candle, to a special memorial candle called a 𝙑𝙗𝙤𝙪𝙩 candle. 𝙑𝙗𝙤 means to remember. And it's burning now in my lounge. So I feel it's kind of
such a beautiful remembrance. What synergy. It's so funny, serendipitous, whatever. However, the energy of the universe works, that we would be talking on this day of this thing. And I want people to think about how we really do have this hidden hand that is helping us all the time, that sometimes we get in the way of also, though, right? So you don't know when the good opportunities are going to show up. You don't know how the divine plan is unfolding in your life. Like, you don't have a hot clue. So when these neat synergies happen, like, there's no chance in the world that I would have met Pam unless I would have just followed my internal voice of, oh, I think I should interview this person. And, oh, I'm going to say yes to this thing. And I'm going to do this to this thing. And and I say no to things also, but having the discernment so that you go, oh, okay, this is like the cool opportunities. This is where the juice is. This is where the fun of life is. And that this would be the day that your husband, who you absolutely adored, would have left this earth. And it's the day that you're kind of having the second coming out of this book. I couldn't be more thrilled, Pam, to be in your corner, reaching people. Yeah, it's very exciting.
Thank you, Leah. I think that I must just say one more thing about the actual book.
Yes.
For listeners who have no idea, I did want to present Israel's point of view.
Yes.
But I also would like to make it clear that I don't think that Israel is a perfect country by any manner of means. And I don't think that it doesn't make mistakes. Every country makes mistakes. And I don't think that Israel's got all the right on their side, and our sort of enemies, who I hope won't be our enemies for much longer. There seems to be a new wind of opportunity blowing through our region. Just today, or yesterday, we signed yet another peace treaty with Bhutan. And Morocco was 2 days ago, and the Emirates, and it's just completely overwhelming. And let's hope that better days are in store. But I do want to make that point clear, that I don't think that Israel is a blameless, perfect country. But I just do think that all countries should be judged in the same playing field. It shouldn't always be the one country that gets all the flack. That was what I wanted to say.
Yes, and beautifully put. I again, to media. I think a lot of what media shows is not what the true story is on the ground. And I want to just point out that this peace deal that Pam's referring to, when she wrote her book 10 years ago, or 11 years almost ago now, she said at the beginning of the book, the note to the reader was, at the very moment this novel goes to print, direct negotiations are getting underway in Washington under the auspices of President of the United States of America, Barack Obama, between President Mahmoud Abbas, representing the Palestinian Authority, and Mr. Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel. It's my sincere hope that the talks will succeed and everyone in the region will be able to live in peace and security that we all crave. And this it's just struck me so strong, Pam, because if we would have had this interview 2 days sooner, we wouldn't be talking about this latest peace accord. Like, so we should be going, bravo, bravo for the world that there has been this change, because people might not even realize how significant this is. But there has not been a peace deal in the Middle East like this since 1994. That's a very long time. And, imagine you living in that amount of unpeace or unrest, wherever it is that you are, for that amount of years. How, if your government came to this agreement where we're going to bring peace to the region, you don't have to be afraid for your kids walking out the door. You don't have to be afraid for your children's school getting bombed or their kindergarten getting bombed. In the same way, like, we're all working towards this peace. So it is monumental. And yes.
It is monumental. I would like to say something else for listeners who perhaps have never been to Israel.
Yes.
Except for during the time of the Intifada, really, when you come here, it's a lovely country. It's got its very great, beautiful parts. And you certainly don't feel frightened. The time that I was describing when we felt really frightened was during the time of the Intifada, where there were bombs, every week and sometimes every day, and sometimes ghastly twice a day. And that carried on for a period. But you must feel free to come and visit us, because it's safe here now.
Right. Yes. And even more safe, in all the rest of the nation's surroundings. So it is a big deal. And I'm glad that you wrote that preface. When I read it, I went, oh, your heart's just the heart is in the right place. I think so many people are not given airtime that are thinking about how are we making the world a better place? There's so much energy spent in the tearing down of things, and lots of it, thousands of hours on the TV every week. So it's a pleasure to actually be speaking with somebody that's talking about, or thinking about at least, the reparation of things and the honoring of things, honoring of traditions, honoring of things that have in the past. It's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater, but it's like, how do we actually make things more beautiful in the way that we operate in the world? So in the last 10 minutes of the interview, Pam, can you talk about, your work now and, the direction that you're going, or what you would like to see happen with the book now that you're talking about it?
I would like to see mega sales of the book.
Mega sales. Exactly.
A movie with Scarlett Johansson acting as
beautiful. It's good. Put it out there, Scarlett.
So as I said, that I'm a journalist. I would like to see big changes in the leadership in this country, but we won't get into that. I think that there's lots of changes would be great. I am a lecturer in English literature, so and now with the lockdown and the pandemic, it's actually been quite a bizarre opportunity for people who can lecture not only in a lecture hall to people who can physically get there, of course, but to all over the world. Right. And actually tonight I'm giving a lecture on Shakespeare's Women in another few hours over were they devils or angels? What did Shakespeare think about women? Right. So you're invited to watch that.
Will it be available live? Yes.
It's going to be live, 9 o'clock Israel time, 7 o'clock UK time, and I'm not sure what time in Canada. So and I'm starting next week a course enjoying Shakespeare online. So, if anyone wants to find out details, they can just look in my Facebook, Pam Peled.
Beautiful.
Maybe you can write the name.
Yes.
Pamela, Pamela. And you can see I hope it's going to be fun. Some of the things that I talk about in my book, but in greater detail, of course.
Yes.
I've got a column in the Jerusalem Post where I write about whatever I want to write about, and that's very nice to have that. And then I've also got another column in the paper that I write with an ultra-Orthodox woman and a middle-of-the-road religious woman, and I'm the sort of secular voice, although I'm very traditional and not really 100% secular, but we write about different issues from our different point of view, like why should we or shouldn't we cover our heads, and we relate that to the whole question of feminism and women's rights and the keeping the Sabbath, should you or what does it give us, and why do we, and what we believe, what we think of God, and all kinds of
important topics,
very weighty topics we discuss. We often get to great confrontations about it because there are lots of issues which I don't even think I can go into. But for example, the ultra-Orthodox in general don't send their children to the army, and that's there's lots to discuss. And I write for a magazine in England, so I've got nice work. I lecture as well at universities. So
beautiful. Yeah.
I
was watching something last night about the change and we don't have to speak about it here. It struck me. It was just the number of people who are not Christian in Israel. And so there was a little spiel about the number of people who are becoming Christian in Israel in the last maybe 2 or 3 years is pretty substantial because it's not a huge population in Israel, really. No,
the Christians is a smallish population in Israel. They always say that the Christians in Israel, it's obviously Jerusalem and the Bethlehem. It's very, very holy for the Christians, all the sites. My daughter's a tour guide, and one of her specialities is bringing Christians to all the holy places and the holy churches, and where all the steps of the cross, and in Jerusalem and that. But the Christians are having, I think, quite a hard time in the neighboring countries. There's quite a lot of persecution in some of the neighboring countries. In Israel, obviously there's no persecution of Christians. I'm not sure if the numbers are increasing. I haven't.
Yeah, it was this young broadcaster, and they've got some sort of organization where they, have been tracking. They've got a big online presence, around the world, I guess. And so this is my first hearing of it also too, Pam. So it was just like, oh, well, that's interesting and that's neat. And also just a very once in a 2,000 years thing is happening also during this little time of between now and the 25th, which is these planets that are actually crossing one another, Jupiter and Saturn. They get so close that they actually make what looks like in the night sky the Star of Bethlehem is actually what I've heard. Isn't that crazy? Just like, what? That's so cool, but it's just cool, right? So I just go, oh, that's really cool. And there's so many mysteries that are constantly, showing themselves to us if we want to see them and if we want to delight in them, even if we don't understand 100% what's going on. It's just like, oh, that's very cool, very interesting.
Very cool, very cool.
It is. So you could tell your daughter that little nugget. She can look it up. I'll send it to you after the show. It's very, very fun. So are you working on any other books at the moment, or is this your one beauty? Or
I've written 3 books. Another book I wrote was How to Have a Husband and Live with Your Lover at the Same Time. And I won't reveal how that's done, but I will reveal it. Obviously, you have to make your husband into your lover. And I took 10 rules from the 50s. 10 rules for a good housewife, make sure that you dust everything before he comes home and put some makeup on and squirt yourself with perfume and cook for him and make him. And I integrated that with literature, pieces
right.
of literature to show that it's about life and love and literature. That is a fun book. And then I've got another book called Three Ladies, Three Lattes, and that's the book of our column, of the religious women and the very religious and the religious and me. And we talk about our lives and our backgrounds and why we're in Israel and from our 3 different religious points of view. It's interesting.
That is interesting. How long have you guys been meeting for?
About 10 years.
Wow.
And there've been times when we just can't anymore, and we have a big flare up and we say, that's it, no more columns. And then we settle down, and it's difficult, but it's very rewarding.
Right. Oh, that's absolutely beautiful. So can people get copies of those books also on your Facebook page, Pam?
I will put them on.
Pop them on there. And I'm sure you can look up Pam. Are they all available on Amazon?
Yeah.
All available on Amazon. That is incredible. Yes. So get your gift pack for your sisters and your mom, or however many moms you have, and your mother-in-law, because this is about peacekeeping, ladies.
And your fathers and your brothers.
Your fathers. That's right. This is about peacekeeping, ladies. This is the true peacekeeping. It's the real work, right? Is getting together with a group and talking about difficult things and to go like it is. That's beautiful. It's a beautiful, not theoretical example. It's a beautiful example in the real world. So all you ladies there should give yourselves a pat on the back for sticking with such a noble cause. Maybe it's not noble, but whatever it is, thing, and creating something of meaning in a world that can really be very destructive between people. So I'm just going to do the pat on the back for all of you for doing all of that work for all of us, because energetically what you create by doing that is more peace and harmony in the world, and increase all of our vibration throughout the planet by being peacemakers. And it's not peacekeepers. Peacekeepers are a very different thing. Peacemakers are people who actually get in and resolve problems. So that is a big job. It is important work. It is weighty work. And you look, 25. So I'm not sure how this is not all stressing you out, but you seem to be, it seems to be agreeing with you, Pam.
Oh, how sweet you are. You need to get a stronger prescription for your glasses, I think. For you.
It's all this technology. No, it's the smiling, I'm sure. It's smiling in real life stuff. Beauty inside and out, as my mom would say. She's a beauty inside and out. That's the goal. Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been an absolute delight, Pam. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with the listening audience?
The festival of Hanukkah in Israel and all over the world at the moment. There's Festival of Lights, the 8 days that we light the candles each night and give the children chocolate money. And we say it's the Festival of Light, where you hope that you spread light and joy. And Christmas is coming up, and let's just really pray for peace and hope and health, most especially health. Right. And I think there is hope now. We seem to have a lot of hope with the vaccine up and running. It's already rolling in some countries, and they say it's going to start in Israel in a few days' time. And it will be wonderful to see the light at the end of the tunnel, come back to lovely Canada for a holiday. My brother lives in just outside Vancouver in Victoria Island.
Oh, beautiful.
And I love Canada.
It is a great country, and like all things, the health is really important. So people taking care of your health is about really reducing stress and enjoying the people who are in your life. Nourish your mind with good things. Nourish your mind with good things, and be around people that uplift you. And that see you as the positive human being that you are. And maybe if you've been struggling this year, it's to just carry on with, this 2020 has been a tough year. Give yourself a pat on the back for making it this far. Congratulate yourself for getting to this point. This next few days is supposed to be about raising all of our good energy. And so this Advent time, this Hanukkah time, this whatever, if you're not religious at all or you're not practicing any faith, just know, like astrologically, there's wonderful things happening that are supposed to be an upliftment to the human spirit. So take that in. And Pam, thank you so much for being such a wonderful guest. And good luck with your event tonight. Again, go to Pam's site if you want to check out Women in Shakespeare, because I'm going to get off this interview and get right on there. Oh,
okay,
wonderful.
I'll put it on. At the moment, I haven't put it on my Facebook, but I will. I will put it on right now.
That would be fabulous.
5 minutes.
Okay. And I will make sure to put it in the show notes so that if all of you want to follow up with what Pam's doing after this evening in her other Shakespeare online work, that would be absolutely fantastic. Again, thank you, Pam, for your time today. And take good care. That's all for us. Bye for now.
For everyone. Bye. Bye.